Where's my PDF? There it is. Okay, so we're talking about ATP now, yeah? This is the energy currency of all life. You guys agree? And continually, when we eat, we take the energy from our food and we use that energy that's in the chemical bonds in the food and we use it to make ATP. And ATP is a sort of a convenient energy currency, yeah? And you guys understand the term currency in this context? When you think currency, what should you naturally think? Money, right? Have I discussed this with you guys? The relationship between ATP and money? You think so? Yeah? Basically what I said was, you know, when I have a job, I teach, yeah? And when I teach, I get a paycheck, right? My boss does not say, great job, Dirk, here's a slice of pizza. Here's a gallon of gas, or here's a tea pass, and there's the couch. That would be insulting to a man of. But tea pass and the are things that have value. Yeah, does that make sense? But they don't pay me with those because A, I wanted to drive a car and have a place to sleep. Thank you very much. Yeah, I have an apartment that I'm already renting. Yeah, so I don't need to sleep on the couch here. Does that make sense? That's not to say that I take and I never needed at some point in my life to crash on somebody's couch, right? All of those are true, yeah? And so all of those things would be valuable, but they don't happen to be valuable to me now. So how do they compensate me for my work? They give me currency. They give me money, yeah? And why is that? Because my landlord accepts money, the burger joint accepts money, and the gas station accepts money, yeah? You've heard Visa is everywhere you want to be. Money is everywhere you want to be, right? So money is the interface between the value of whatever the heck it is that I do for a living and the value of whatever the heck it is I want in my life. Is that clear? Likewise, does that mean I'm getting, so this is not saying that people get the amount of money that they deserve in life. I think it's quite clear that that's not the case. Nevertheless, I get a certain for the work I do. Likewise, interface between the value of what we do and the stuff that we want. Does that make sense? Right? And because all of us agree that money is valuable and we all want it, it's receive and from anyone and give to anyone. Yeah? Does that make sense? Likewise, lots of things have energy that we eat. Cheeseburgers, pizza, pasta, salads, all of them have calories, right? And all of those calories can be converted, or most of those calories can be converted into ATP. And then ATP can be used everywhere in the cell. Have we seen examples of where ATP can be used? Yeah. Do you guys remember the kinesin walking on the microtubule? Every step, he had to have an ATP in order to make that step happen. You remember that, yeah? Right? So that was clearly a place where we saw the value of ATP in order to get things done in the cell, yeah? Likewise, I have a couple other examples here, right? Your muscles, when I do push-ups to get ripped, you know, the thing that's making my muscles move is not little cheeseburgers exploding in my arms, yeah? It's little ATPs exploding, giving proteins that doing a very similar job to what kinesin did, right? Every ATP, kinesin took a step. Every ATP, this protein called myosin grabs this purple protein called actin and pulls it, yeah? And if you've got a zillion of these and a zillion of those in your muscle, then as they all pull, like a bunch of guys pulling on a tug of war rope, then two things become closer, yeah? As the rope is pulled, yeah? My muscle becomes shorter and my arm moves. Does that make sense? So ATP powers the movement of all of our bodies, yeah? ATP lets things into and out of cells by opening and closing transport proteins, yeah? Letting things pass through. ATP provides the energy to build two molecules out of one, yeah? So these are various places, right? ATP, it's everywhere in the cell you want to be, yeah? Does that make sense? In the same way that money is everywhere you want to be. Is that you guys convinced of this, yeah? Okay, so we can look at the shape of ATP and get an idea of how it works, yeah? So, ATP, what kind of molecule is it? Carbohydrate, lipid, protein, or nucleic acid? It looks like a nucleic acid. It looks like a little piece of DNA, yeah? It's actually technically a little piece of RNA because on the ribose sugar you can see two OH groups there. DNA is deoxyribose, and there's one less OH on the ribose sugar. So this is a little piece of RNA, not a little piece of DNA, but that's a fine detail, yeah? What else we can see is that it's the TP part of it. Adenosine is the A part, that's adenine, and the TP, what's that? Triphosphate, right? And we can see 1, 2, 3 phosphate groups, yeah? What can you notice about the charge of those phosphate groups? Negatively charged, yeah? All phosphates have a negative charge. So you can imagine what would happen if I took a molecular pair of scissors and cut right here in between these phosphates, yeah? What would happen to this third phosphate if I cut the covalent bonds holding this phosphate to the other two? It would fly off, right? It wouldn't just fall off. It would fly off. And what would make it fly off with force? The charge, the negative repulsion of these two negatives to these two negatives, yeah? Negative and negative repel each other, right? So this molecule represents stored energy, right? In order to take an ATP, right, and turn it, right? When we cut this phosphate flies off. And if I had some little bowling pins, this little PI right here, inorganic phosphate, would knock over my bowling pins. Yeah? In other words, it would do work. Are you convinced? All right. So that's the energy in ATP. And if I want to make ATP, well, I have to put this phosphate back on there. Yeah? And that would require work too. Yeah? It would take putting this phosphate onto these other two phosphates would be basically forcing two magnets together that were at their backwards polar ends. Don't you? You've felt two magnets pull each other, yeah? You've tried to flip one of those magnets around and push the magnets together? Yeah? It takes force. You can do it, but you have to really press on those magnets in order to squish them together. Guys understand what I'm saying? So that's the energy from food that makes the ATP, yeah? Energy doesn't just grow on trees. It requires force, yeah? Guys with me here? Okay, great. So, so you see the usefulness of ATP, and that's why ATP is continually recycled, yeah? And as a currency. The food we eat goes in, the energy from the food is used to make ATPs, and then the ATPs are used to do the jumping jacks or the flapping of the mouth or whatever it is we want to do. Is that clear? All right. So if one other point that's worth making here is that when I eat a cheeseburger, is that a good source of ATP? It's actually a good source of the energy for making ATP. But if I took a human being and put him in a, homogenized him, put him in a blender, yeah? And then purified out, what a wonderful idea. Sorry, just kidding. So if I purified out the ATP from a human being, yeah? David, I'm sorry.
I'm really tired.
Okay. I thought it was grossing you out there. So if I purified out the ATP from a person, it would be measured in the tablespoons, yeah? But if each time I moved my arms, I took the ATP that was used and I weighed it before I used it, right? And then at the end of the day, I tallied up all the ATP I had used and the weight of all the ATP I'd used, it would measure in the tons, yeah? The difference between the tons of ATP I use in a day and the tablespoons of ATP I have in my body at one particular time is the amount of recycling of ATP that happens over the course of a day for all of us. You understand? You guys get that? Right? Okay. So ATP is continually recycled. And it's kind of the analogy with money is quite a good one. Yeah? The amount of money I've made this year versus the amount that's still in my bank account is the amount that's still in my bank account is a tiny, tiny fraction of the wads of cash that I've made so far. Yeah? And that's true for all of us. At the end of the year, the amount of money in our bank accounts is pitifully small and the amount compared to the amount of money we've generated. Wow. That's depressing. Anyway, for me, I don't know about you guys, but okay. All right, so a couple more concepts. Maybe how are you guys doing? It's 10:15.